Well, let's talk to Vicky Pryce now, the international economist and business consultant. Vicky, lovely to see you. Welcome back. UK inflation rising faster than expected in July. How likely are we now to see interest rate cuts later this year?
Well, the markets seem to have repriced the possibility of a cut, suggesting that it's unlikely that this will happen. And yet, the Bank of England had already said that it expected inflation to rise to about 4% later this year and then start coming down to the target rate of 2% during 2026. I mean, the interesting thing is that the market have reacted to this 0.1% difference in the actual figures for July rather negatively. I mean, yes, it's true that we've seen food prices in particular going up and airfares going up. The airfares happen to be because the type of comparison that was made 12 months earlier is not exactly right, or at least exactly comparable with where we are now, because of the different timing that those fares were in fact looked at and therefore entered into the CPI. So it could be a one-off in terms of the slight increase faster than has been anticipated. But yes, the markets seem to have become rather pessimistic about this, which in many ways I think will be rethought, in my view, over the next few months. I think we still are going to see another cut, probably in the autumn, coming from the Bank of England.
China holding its benchmark rate steady despite low inflation. What does that signal in terms of monetary stimulus?
I think China's probably wanted to wait and see what is going to be happening. I mean, it's a very tumultuous period. We have the tariff situation, which is obviously unsettling. But we have seen a slowdown in China, which therefore, would have probably resulted, or at least expected to result in a cut in rates. Inflation is still very low. So it would be interesting to see what they do next. But it's probably, not a great surprise, because if you look at the poll of economists beforehand, I think they all expected that there wouldn't be any change at this time either.
And all eyes on the Fed, of course, ahead of the Jackson Hole meeting this Friday. What's going to happen?
Well, all the eyes are indeed going to be on Jay Powell and what he says. We know the pressure on the Fed from President Trump has been rather significant. He wants to see lower rates. He's talking now about getting rid of yet another federal governor who's on the deciding committee. So he's clearly sort of stepping in a big way, trying to influence, if you like, what happens in the next meeting. So what Jay Powell says is going to be very, very important in terms of whether it's going to be a softening of his stance or whether he's going to stick to the hawkish view he had before.
It's hard to shed a tear for those poor old underpaid bankers. Interest rate decisions never easy, of course. How big a challenge are Mr. Trump's rather unpredictable tariffs for central bankers all around the world?
I think they are for all. And I think the interesting thing when you look at the US in particular, it's not so much just the short-term rates, but what we've seen is that bond yields have gone up. In the US, bond yields have gone up in the UK as well, and that, of course, makes it much, much harder for companies to borrow, but also the cost, and individuals, but also the cost of servicing debt, which is a serious issue, both in the US and in the UK in particular. What you've seen, though, elsewhere is that because there's been a reevaluation of what sort of growth we're going to have, but also a little bit more confidence maybe that the Europeans have maybe their act together a little bit more than others. We've seen yields in Europe actually not doing that badly, and interest rates, of course, by the European Central Bank coming down faster than elsewhere. So there is a bit of imbalance there. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's a difficult job. You can't quite estimate what the tariff increases are going to mean in terms of prices. We are probably going to wait to see what happens in the US. Wholesale prices going up already. So there is going to be, I think, a short-term, maybe medium-term uptick in inflation in the US, and I think that's what is making the Fed a little bit sort of skeptical and careful about what they do next.
Vicky, good to see you. Thank you for that. Vicky Pryce, the international economist and business consultant.